This is Up Close. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. In this week's episode, we're taking two perspectives on the cycles we humans go through. We've all seen political and election cycles, but none of us has had the front row seat of NBC News political director and moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd. Examining the administration of President Barack Obama to date, Todd is the author of The Stranger, Barack Obama in the White House. But then, there are larger, broader cycles that affect so much of how we live. These are cycles that outlast not only presidencies, but countries and eras. MacArthur Genius Grant awardee and Columbia University professor Ruth DeFries explores these cycles in The Big Ratchet, How Humanity Thrives in the Face of Natural Crisis. But first, here's my interview with Chuck Todd about The Stranger in the White House. So, overall, the impression one gets when looking at Barack Obama's legacy over the past 6 years, which is what you've done with this book, one gets the sense a lot of it could have been written almost as a forecast by his campaign opponents back in 2008, right?
Some of them would argue that. I think some of his biggest critics argue that you know, they look at some of the critiques they made of him. Hey, he's inexperienced, he's never managed a large enterprise, politically might be a little naive, he's, you know, and I think there is sort of some of his critics might want to say, I told you so's. But you got to remember what the time we were in. The country was looking for freshness. The country was looking for somebody that didn't have a lot of experience in Washington. They were kind of hoping that that would bring a disruption. And I think that in hindsight, in the way I looked at it, and the way I was looking at his presidency, had to do with sort of that great promise of changing politics, changing in a different way. I think he certainly changed the way we campaign. I think he changed the way campaigns are structured, but he didn't change governing.
Looking at this book overall, you've got probably noticeably less than a third of it is related to foreign policy.
Right.
And he really wanted to be a foreign policy president.
Always been one of the, and look, I could have gone on more. You're absolutely, you know, this was the struggle with the book, actually. It's like you could have done a whole thing just on healthcare. Could have done a whole thing just on the politics of Obama versus the Clintons, you know, and supremacy in the Democratic Party.
I mean, there was an entire book just on the stimulus package.
That's right, and legitimately so, and ditto with foreign policy. You know, it was always one of the things that I think the Hillary Clinton campaign underestimated about Obama was the idea that he wasn't engaged in well thought and didn't have well crafted ideas of and a vision of what his foreign policy, what he wanted it to be. He did, and I think he wanted to be more involved. I think he feels handcuffed by history a little bit. I think, I think he thought the Arab Spring was going to be this huge opportunity, and it's turned out to be arguably just a historical disaster.
This idea of what he believed could be done and how he believed it could be done and how things really work, which is, you describe, you know, ample critique of his work as an executive, but very much it seemed that he feels, in the quotes that you use and so forth, that his words are enough to change things. And at times they are, and at times they aren't, but he sticks with that same strategy.
He does, and I certainly think they were. I mean, I think in the first term, his words did carry some weight that most American presidents at that time, or in a similar situation, wouldn't have had that kind of weight given to their words. There's no doubt, right? The Cairo speech made an impact. Positive, negative in different places, it made an impact. I think there were people around him and in the foreign policy community who really believed that you want to change the narrative about the United States of America around the world, prove what America just proved, went against its caricature and elected a minority president of the United States. That in itself, so he believed that the symbolism of him was going to give him some opportunities on the world stage that I think he had. But then, you know, and this is where you can't say it's on him. I think events spiraled out of control. And
now Ruth DeFries with the longer-term view. In not that great amount of time, we've massively increased our population.
It's an explosion in population over the past 50 years, a quadrupling or so. Part of that is from the availability of food. Part of that is from public health measures, sanitation, vaccines, et cetera.
You talk about how over thousands of years and preceded by over millions of years and billions of years, the Earth has these cycles for getting all the nutrients where they need to be and for dealing with waste products and so forth. But as humans reach such a huge portion of the population, we're essentially refusing to allow for that cycle to take place because we have a much more rapid need.
Exactly. One of the amazing features of our planet is the machinery it has to recycle nutrients like carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, all of these nutrients that are essential for life. So each of those has its own natural recycling process. And what we've done in the course of our expansion is to manipulate those cycles in our favor.
Yeah, and you draw this interesting contrast between the time of Socrates and the time of today. That Socrates said, if you got the from a distance, the world looks blue and green, right? But and you wouldn't notice that humans are here if you took a bird's eye view, if you took a high sky view of the world. But you would very much notice that today, and that's a major change from even just, again, 100 years ago.
Almost everywhere you look, there is an imprint of what we've done to the planet, and much of it has related to the need to produce food. So farms, pastures, roads, cities are very dominant features on the planet now.
It's only near the very end that you bring up climate change, which is probably the dominant issue in terms of discussion of what may face us in the coming decades, in the coming century.
Today, climate and food production are very tightly linked. Agriculture produces about a quarter of all the greenhouse gases emissions from human sources, whether it's livestock or cutting down trees to expand agriculture. So it's a big part of the climate issue today. Not to mention the other side of it is that agriculture, there's a big effect of climate on agriculture that we are already seeing.
When you look at this landscape of all these problems we're facing quite acutely at a much more precise moment in time than the kinds of problems that we were facing before, what's your best guess? How do we go forward?
My best guess, well, I wouldn't want to make a guess because so many times people have predicted calamity that has not come to pass. But my thinking would be that if we apply our ingenuity and do a lot of hard work on these tough problems that we face, obesity, climate change, all of these issues, that we will muddle through like we have in the past.
That's all for this week's abbreviated web episode of Up Close. A reminder, you can see the full episode of Up Close on the Jewish Channel on cable, or listen to the full audio of the show as a podcast available on iTunes and your favorite podcast player. The Jewish Channel is available on cable: Time Warner Cable Channel 1640, iOptlink Channel 505, RCN Channel 268, Cox Cable Channel 1, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, and on Comcast and the on-demand menu on premium channels. For more information, visit tjctv.com.